haunting the horizon. 8 miles offshore, this is Red Sands. And while it may look more science fiction, the fort forms a crucial part of military history. Once a wartime guardian of our coast, it's now unique, the only intact structure of its kind in the world, and campaigners want to save it.
The passion really started for me during the 60s when I visited the fort as a radio station, and I was so impressed by the structure. I was determined to find out about its history and the reason why it was put there in the first place. And of course a lot of this was top secret till many years after the war, so the information was quite difficult to get hold of.
Built in 1943, Red Sands was commissioned in the wake of the Blitz. With 2 other army forts nearby, there was one aim: defend the capital. In all, the fort helped bring down 22 aircraft and 31 flying bombs. The army abandoned it in 1956.
Reception reports, please, to the Chief Sound Engineer.
A decade later came the radio revolution, and with it a new role for Red Sands, the pirate broadcasters. John Ross Barnard spent 3 years on board.
2 weeks on, 1 week off playing gramophone records. Quite ridiculous. All I can remember is just an extreme sense of hope mixed with loneliness, and we would stand looking at the shore to see the headlights of the cars passing by.
A legal dispute in 1967 closed the show, leaving Red Sands deserted, a lonely landmark from the coast at Whitstable. The Project Red Sands team has been set up to repair the fort. There are plans for a museum here, and the commercial potential's being looked at too. It's ambitious, but the team's confident Red Sands will be restored.
We're 6 miles offshore, north of Whitstable.
Aren't these fantastic? From this angle, they almost look as if they're moving. There's a hint of every robot monster that you ever saw in a sci-fi film. But more than anything, to me, they look like the Martians in the War of the Worlds.
This group of odd-looking towers is the Red Sand Sea Fort. Built in 1943, it was a late addition to London's air defences. The vision of engineer Guy Monsell. Because building offshore in wartime was dangerous, Monsell had to pioneer a new technique of construction. Each of the 750-ton towers was assembled on land, then floated out on pontoons and dropped onto the seabed. When in place, the individual towers of the fort were linked by aerial walkways. The fort housed up to 265 men, stationed here for a month at a time.
This is a very strange place. On the one hand, it's all this rusted metal and rivets. It feels like the rusting hulk of an old battleship. But then you come in here, there's beds. Because since the war, it's used intermittently as a radio station. It just adds to the sense of it being, I don't know, vaguely haunted out here. Strange place.
This was one of 3 forts built in the Thames estuary. They were the result of hard lessons learnt early in the war, when German bombers had used the Thames as a route to navigate to the capital. From the top of the towers, anti-aircraft guns had a clear shot at planes trying to get to London. They destroyed 22 of them, as well as 30 flying bombs. For Monsell, it was an engineering triumph.
And you can feel the whole thing move. And that's because 750 tons or not, the strength of the fort comes from the fact that the legs can move, they can settle into the constantly shifting sand, and they can roll with the waves and the wind, much like a tree does. They say that even if one of the legs was blown out, the individual tower would still remain standing.
Maunsell's sea fort design was to serve Britain one more time after the war. In 1955, the very first offshore drilling platform in the North Sea was adapted from his tower design, a clear inspiration for the oil rush 10 years later.